Everything that's going on right now, and I say right now, but it's been going on for a long time, but there's just one main thing that's just really bugging me, and I don't know, maybe it's me, maybe I just don't understand, maybe I've misinterpreted, but I just don't get it. It seems in this day and age, the word is negative, or it's perceived to be a negative thing. And I don't know, maybe, like I said, maybe I just don't understand what it actually is. But I'm going to read you the definition of privilege. This is what it says on Google. It's just so, this is not my words. It says, a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or group. Okay, let me read this again. A special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or group. I'm going to read the first three, A special right, advantage. Okay, all right, so let's pause right there. Since when did a special right or advantage become a bad thing? Like, when was that a negative thing? When was that something that you shouldn't seek? That's literally what everybody's out there for, is to get advantages, to get privilege. That's something you should seek. You should want privilege. But it just seems, there seems to be certain privileges that people don't want to accept that it's a good thing. Like, it's almost like you tell them and they're like, nah, they get defensive. And it's like, oh, you want to be privileged. I feel like we live in a society, like, you want to be privileged. You should seek every single privilege you can get. You could look at having money and say that's not a privilege, but most of us would say that's a privilege. Having a ton of money, being well off, most of us would consider a privilege. That's something you should want. Now, does that mean that having a ton of money means you have no problems? No. But most people would say the pros outweigh the cons. So where is this negativity that I keep seeing every time people talk about people's privileges? No matter what it is, there seems to be this defensive, mindset everybody gets when you start talking about privilege. And I just don't get it. It drives me insane. Because it's almost like you want to be on the opposite side. So you want to be not privileged? So you want to be broke? So you can say you're not privileged? So it gives you an excuse as to why you're not X, Y, and Z. As to why you're not happy. Or as to why you haven't gotten to where you've gotten. Because you haven't had the privileges that other people have gotten. That's what you want? That is the most... I hate calling people dumb. I hate saying that, but I literally don't know what other word that I can put in that. Like, you sound like you have no sense. You have an easier path. You have an easier way, and you're trying to tell me you want the harder way? What sense does that make? Own your privilege, accept your privilege, and move forward. What are you guilty about? That you should be thinking, whatever your spiritual background is, whatever you atheist, whatever, it doesn't matter. You should be grateful that you got your privileges, whether you earned it or not. Whether your parents worked so hard and that's why you have a ton of money, or your parents didn't work, they just came from generational wealth, that's irrelevant. You both have a lot of money and you're both privileged. It doesn't matter that your parents worked hard and their parents didn't. It doesn't matter. You shouldn't feel like, I deserve this more than you. No, you don't. You yourself didn't do nothing for that. It was handed to you. Good for you. Congrats. It's a good thing. But there seems to be this insecurity that comes out when I point my finger at you and I tell you you're privileged. It's almost like you feel like I'm taking something away from you. Well, that's your problem, because that's your privilege. So only you know how much that privilege helped you get to where you got. And if you have such a big issue with someone pointing their finger at you and telling you you're privileged, then do yourself a favor. Do something, be something, start acting in a certain way that has nothing to do with your privilege. Then the next time someone points their finger at you or tweets at you talking about your privilege, you're not going to feel some type of way. You're not going to feel like they're taking something away from you. Because you have already identified the internal validation in yourself that I got to X, Y, and Z without that shit. It did nothing for me. Or you could just own it and walk around. You don't owe anybody anything because of the things you've been given. I don't feel guilty that I have 2 hands and two feet. And I shouldn't. And people that don't, I should be grateful, because there are people that don't. And that is a privilege. Whether I want to accept it or not is a privilege. And other people who don't have that will say, no, it's not a privilege. But that's the perspective that they have. And that's a good mindset. Because privilege is all about perspective. But there's certain privileges that are not perspective. There's no perspective about them. And when it comes to the privilege of not facing any type of racism, that's not perspective. That is a privilege. That period, end of story. I don't know about how anybody can tell me that facing racism is somehow positive.